This is my oral presentation of the short story Button Button by Richard Matheson from Megan Richard. The Circle of Life. This is a concept given to anyone human. You are responsible for your choices, your actions, and the consequences from those actions. From the poor in Africa to the very wealthy in New York, in their penthouses, they are part of the circle of life. From the day you are born to the day you die, you will go through some life-changing events. One thing that is personal to every single human being are the choices they individually make. The rules of life. The rules of life are very important to know and understand. By rules of life, I mean this. Actions have consequences and they have a lasting effect and impact on the rest of your life. There is no reset, undo, or edit button in your life. Even if you saw some characters in a movie use a remote control to go back in time, or some other TV show trying to make a time machine, it is not possible in our present days. People need to understand that they are the only ones responsible for their actions. Moreover, you are free to make a choice between the action you are taking, but you are not free from the consequences that will come from the choices you previously made. One big aspect of life in our modern society would be linked to money. When choosing the career you want to pursue, you are also choosing on how to spend that money, which will influence your life and the choices you'll make. It is proven that in less wealthy communities, crime is higher, like burglaries and theft. More and more people are trying to find ways to make money easily. It is not uncommon to say that money controls us. Here is a question. What if you could, with the press of a button, make $50,000? But there's a catch. By making that action, you would kill an unknown person as a consequence. What choice would you make? Richard Matheson, a science fiction well-known author whose short stories and novels have almost all turned into motion pictures, wrote a short story named Button Button. Matheson usually has a common theme in all of his books, novels, short stories, as a relation between the struggle of a man against nature forces and what goes on the inside and outside of the person. Those stories are usually about a tragic event or bad luck because of the character who committed an innocent act. This statement is clearly depicted in the short story Button Button, which was first republished in Playboy in the June edition and afterwards republished for a collection of short stories. Here is a short summary of that story. The exposition. Norma and Archer Lewis are a married middle-class couple from New York. They received a suspicious box in the mail, and underneath the box, there is a paper about getting called at 8 p.m. The rising action. Mr. Stewart comes to the Lewis's household to explain what the package is. He states the regulations and the usage of the button. You push the button, you can earn $50,000. But someone you don't know will die. A few days later, Norma calls Mr. Stewart for more information. The climax. Norma is home alone and decides to press the button to receive the $50,000, even though she knows her husband is against it. Following action is when Norma receives a call from the hospital stating that her husband is dead. He died in a train accident. The resolution is when Norma receives the $50,000, and she then understands that that money was actually her husband's life insurance money that was doubled. She immediately calls Mr. Stewart to accuse him of killing her husband. He answers this sentence. Did you really think you knew your husband? This is a really important sentence in this short story. Let's talk about the four main important characters. First, there's Norma Lewis. She is the protagonist of the story. She is also married to Archer Lewis. This woman is very greedy and she only cares about her welfare. She has no morale whatsoever and she wants to push the button. She does not think about the cause and effect of things and how actions have consequences. Second character would be Archer Lewis. He's married to Norma Lewis. Archer really cares about others and he knows that actions have consequences. He does not agree with the offer and he does not want to push the button. Third character would be the button in itself, which actually ends Archer's life with the help of Norma. And this button could be compared to the red button in the president's office, the one we think is used for launching a bomb. This could be compared to when Norma presses a button. It has a bomb effect on her because by pressing the button, she killed her husband. Last character would be Mr. Stewart. Could be perceived as the villain of the story, but at first he was portrayed like a salesman. He's in charge of informing the couple of the regulations of the button, and he has no close relation with the other characters. Now that we have grasped the main elements and characters of the story, it's time to analyze it. Here's my thesis statement. In Button Button by Richard Matheson, the author shows that actions have consequences. So my main concept would be actions and consequences. First excerpt. It's about the different point of views in the story. The first element we can understand from Button Button is that there's a central argument in between the male and female characters. The couple fights constantly about the morality of the deal given by Mr. Stewart. Archer, the husband, clearly states his point to his wife, Norma. On the left is an excerpt of that exact part of the story. By continuing to argue with her husband, the action, Norma is pushing him further away, the consequence. This can be seen on excerpt number 2, when she is constantly arguing with him, even though he asks her to stop. Another element proving that actions have consequences is when Norma chose to keep the torn card and to repiece it together to look for more information. By calling Mr. Stewart the action, she is feeding her curiosity about this mysterious deal, the consequence. Moreover, when she decides to take the newly appeared box, which can be seen on excerpt number 4 on your right, and she takes a box and put it inside on her table, which is the action. This action makes her closer and closer to making that deal with the devil, I would say. So this is a consequence. Excerpt number 4 is about how materialistic Norma is. When she implies and insists to Archer that having $50,000 will buy her happiness, even though the poor guy is trying really hard to make her happy. That's the action. She's showing that she's not the person he thought she was. Indeed, he sees how materialistic she is and how selfish she can be. Last but not least is the most important element of the story, is when she decides to selfishly press a button, action, against her husband's will, and knows that a huge consequence is coming up. The one sentence keeps coming up to her mind. Unknown person. So for her, it equals unknown victim of a murder, which would be the consequence. That can be seen on your left, and that's when Archer says to her that it could be some old women, some old Chinese peasant, some diseased native in Congo, a baby boy in Pennsylvania, and even a beautiful little girl on the next block. In Norma's mind, she pressed the button for the best of both. for her husband, and for a good future for her marriage. But her husband actually never wanted anything or asked for anything. She actually, by pressing the button, killed him. By acting out of anger and greed when pressing the button, the action, she killed her loved one. The consequence. And just like you saw, she took the deal with the devil. After analyzing the entire text, I found three main figures of speech, which were taken for granted at first, but when I took a good look at each sentences, I found a deeper meaning for them. The first one would be a personification. The package was lying by the front door. When reading the sentence for the first time, you picture a package being positioned in someone's front door. But when you understand the under meaning of lying, you see that it is actually meaning that the package is making the action of lying. Here is a definition of lying according to the Merriam-Webster. Marked by or containing untrue statements. A personification is a figure of speech used to personify objects that are doing action that are usually made by people, like making a statement. Since the package is an object, it cannot do the action of literally lying. But when reading the plot, you understand that the truth has been distorted and that the button is covering the truth of the deal. Because at the end, when Norma presses the button, the victim of her act is her husband, someone she thought she knew. Second one would be also personification. This sentence refers to when Norma says that it could be a joke. Norma's husband answers that if it's a joke, it is a sick one. The mention of sickness proves that something dark and negative is going on. Sickness is not something perceived to be a joke, just like the deal with Mr. Stewart offered to the couple. Furthermore, it is exactly the first figure of speech is exactly like the first one, so that the joke cannot do the action of a human. In this case, the joke cannot be sick like a human would be. This sentence has double hidden meaning. Last one would be a repetition, which is what was drilled into Norma's mind. So it's a regrouping of three sentences, and they all refer to someone unknown from Norma, if she takes the deal. So to her, it is not important who the victim is because she won't know the victim, making the act of pressing a simple button in her head a minimal action without heavier consequences at the end. By now, we all know that is totally false, and this is why it's necessary to understand that actions have consequences. To conclude with, throughout this presentation, we understood one important concept. Actions do have consequences, and they speak louder than words. Norma's husband told her explicitly that he did not agree and doesn't want to take the deal because murdering someone was not closely worth the money received. Despite her husband's crystal clear opinion, Norma pressed the button like it was the red button from the president's office and launched a nuclear bomb, the loss of her husband. By making the choice of pressing the button to get more money for both of them to use and live the American dream, she showed the world that in fact she did not even know her husband, because he was happy with what he already had and did not wish to pursue the deal with the devil. Just like Zig Ziglar once said, you are free to make your choices, but you are not free for the consequences that will occur. When reflecting on this saying, would you press the button or not? If you are thinking about the saying, what goes around comes back around, you should think more than twice about your actions because the consequences could be out of proportion from what you thought they would be. Thank you.